start? Ashu, Varsha?
Yes, I think you can.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone. I hope you all are safe and negative. So, my name is Alisha Shaw, and I am DSC lead of Techno International Bhatanagar. So, you may be wondering what is DSC? It stands for Developer Student Clubs and is actually a committee of students where the students organize events or workshops to help other students to learn various technologies and also help them to grow. So we are looking forward to organize more events and hackathons in near future. So we all know that while we are here, still I'm going to clarify it. So most of the students don't know that where the interest lies. They just follow what others are doing. They hear the names of the technologies from here and there, and they just start doing it without just getting a trailer or teaser of it. So I was there too in your place and confused and still am, but a better confused version. So I have made many wrong choices which I don't want you guys to repeat. So we all know marks are not enough and we really need to follow our interest. So don't be a rose without a jack. That means if you're drowning in water, you start grabbing whatever you find like a wooden slab or maybe a floating toy. You just start think that it might support you, but it doesn't help like that. You have to get to know where your interest lies and what you have to do. So, so we are going to start with basic introduction to the most of the topics. If you haven't had breakfast, I hope you had. Please do it while listening to us. So I have my co-speaker Shagnik Mitra with me. He's a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, and he's a really good friend of mine as well. And thank you for being here, Shagnik.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alisha, and hello everyone. Yeah.
Okay, so the flow goes like this. I will start, and after that, Shagnik will continue, and then we will conclude the session. So, just a minute. I hope you are. I hope this is visible. The slides are visible. So, let's get started. So, first, we'll talk about network and security. Let's begin. So, cybersecurity, it's just a random picture with fancy words and the cybersecurity name written on it. Okay, just a second. Okay. Okay, what is cybersecurity? S- Actually the field is becoming more important due to increased reliance on the computer systems like internet, wireless network standards such as Bluetooth or Wi-Fi due to growth of the smart devices, which includes smartphones, televisions, and various devices. So due to this complexity, both in terms of politics and technology, cybersecurity is the like major challenge. Is the also one of the major challenges, and we have been hearing news on many hackers have got the credentials of the system of many organizations, or maybe they hacked into important data. So we have been hearing all this cyber crime, cyber attacks. So what is cybersecurity? It is basically a practice of defending computer servers, mobile devices, electronic devices, systems, data from malicious attacks. So Cybersecurity refers to a body of technology, systems, devices from any unauthorized access. So, why do we need cybersecurity? Uh, these are all types of attacks like malware, SQL injection, phishing. So, actually, it saves your data, your system, everything. And cybersecurity professionals or information security analysts have a responsibility to protect online data from being compromised because prevention is better than cure. So these are the types of softwares which can help you to like protect your data and system, namely antivirus, anti-spyware programs, firewall that block unauthorized access to the network, VPNs. So there are different roles in cybersecurity. There's security engineer, cryptographer, virus technician, penetration tester. So, what does security engineer do? You would test the network for vulnerabilities, monitor for security breaches, and develop security plans and like policies. For cryptographer, as a cryptographer, you would analyze and develop encryption algorithms. uh, the goal of encryption algorithm is actually to secure data, and even if hacker steals the data, they wouldn't be able to read it due to encryption lock. Encryption means that you have some maybe a data, you encrypt it, that is convert into a like code, maybe a hash code. It is just a combination of numbers and alphabets, which is very hard to decrypt it. So it uh, it is very hard for hacker to hack it. And virus technician. So for who is the virus technician? So if you are virus technician, you would stay up to date on the latest viruses found in the world. So your job would also be help develop software that would fight or defend against these new viruses, or maybe develop softwares of the viruses like make antivirus, not like a doctor, maybe a technician on and penetration tester. This is ultimate security job if you associate cybersecurity with hacking. So you get the idea. Hope you get the trailer and teaser about cybersecurity and the rules. So you can get lots of courses, and we are looking forward to organize events. We will jump into the core subjects, course workshops, with taking one topic at a time. So ethical hacking. So you may be wondering, I was talking about hacking is very bad. They just steals your data, hacks into your account without your permission. So why I'm talking about ethical hacking? Because the name itself suggests ethics. So there's a many misconception that hackers are always bad. No, there may be a good hackers. Uh, what do you like? What you need to cut a diamond? A diamond, right? So you need a hacker against a hacker. You need someone to think like a hacker. So basically, there are three types of hackers. Sorry, there is a black hat hacker, gray hat hacker, and white hat hacker. So let's talk about first. Let's talk about ethical hacking. Okay, in the dawn of international conflicts like terrorist organizations, they have been funding cyber crimes, and they are actually compromising national security. They are denying access, and there's a saying that whichever country has um, data is the most powerful country. So data is money nowadays. So if we talk about the three different types of hackers, the first one, let's talk about the first one, the black hat hacker. So this hacker is very bad. What he does that he gets into the system, he hacks the system of some organization without permission, and he breaches the system, steals the credentials, and in return, like blackmail that organization that you have to give me like bitcoins or the money in exchange of your credentials or your data. So he does that. What the white hat hacker does is that the organizations actually hire them and ask them to like check all the vulnerabilities that my system is lacking, see all the loopholes and check all the like vulnerabilities and everything, and just report it to me. If it is that, so then please fix it. So he does that, and he does it before the organization falls into a victim. So it actually prevents the system from hacking. So let's talk about the gray hat hacker. So he is a mixture of black and white. What he does that he actually goes into the system or hacks the system of the organization without permission, but he actually reports it to the organization and tells that, yeah, I have found this all this loopholes, all the vulnerabilities in your system, and this is all which you're lacking. So the organization like ask him like, where does it lack? So he says that, yeah, I will tell you, but in exchange of the money. So actually he is not blackmailing, but he actually reports them and do, I don't know, he's a mixture of that. So there are various phases of ethical hacking. There are actually six phases. First is reconnaissance, is the phase where the attacker gathers information about a target using active or passive means. The tools are used are Google Docs or HPing. Second is scanning. In this process, the attacker begins to actively uh, probe a target, machine, or network for vulnerabilities which he can exploit. And the tools used are Nessus, Nexpose, Nmap. Then gaining access. In this process, the vulnerability is located and you attempt to exploit it in order to enter into the system. And the tool is Metasploit, maintaining access. The fourth one, it is a process where the hacker has already gained access into system, and after the gaining access, he actually installs a backdoor so that he can enter into the system in the future as well. Clearing tracks. So in this process is actually an unethical activity. It has to do with the deletion of logs of all the activities, and he deletes all the logs, and it takes place during the hacking process. After that, reporting. This is what the ethical hackers do. First, they hack into the system, find the vulnerabilities, and then they report it. So they report it to the organization. This is the ethical hacker. So, how can I become an ethical hacker? So you have to be good at networking, really good at it. You should be knowing some programming languages like C++, Python, Ruby, and PHP. Databases for you can go for MySQL or MS SQL. Operating system Windows, Linux, Unix, and Mac. And you should also be very good at cryptography. So these are the few courses you can offer. These are all the certified courses you can do. So you can land a job, obviously. So I hope you got the clear picture of ethical hacking. Let's move on to blockchain. So what is a blockchain? It is generally a chain of blocks. That's it. Each block contains some sort of data that is cryptographically stored in it without any central authorization. So if we look at it, uh, each block has data, its own hash, and the hash of its previous block. So what kind of data? So the data depends on the type of blockchain. Maybe it's a type of the data is type of a Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum. So it depends on that. So you can think of a blockchain as a distributed ledger, and once it is recorded with the data, it becomes immutable. That is, it cannot be changed. So let's just examine this. So this is the first block, and it has got the hash code of its own hash and the previous hash because it doesn't have a previous one. This is the second block, and it has the hash of its own and also the hash of its previous block. And this is the third block. Is it has a hash of its own and it has the previous block hash. Okay. So if you change any content of one block, its hash will change simultaneously. So okay. So a blockchain in the simplest terms a timestamp series of immutable data which is managed by cluster of computers and not owned by like single entity or authorization organization. So each of these blocks are data is secured, very secured, and bound to each other with cryptographic principles. That is the chain. So if we look at it, suppose we tamper one of like the second block. If we tamper it, so its hash will change, right? So resulted as a result, the following blocks hash will also change. So you may be thinking that is wrong or something, but if you look at it, hash is generated like within a seconds by the computers. So if it is tampered, then all the hash of the other blocks will get generated, and it will get valid again. So how does it work? I hope you can see it. I'll explain it. A blockchain system consists of a number of nodes. Don't confuse the nodes with the blocks. Okay, nodes is actually maybe a organization which has a copy of ledger. Remember, I've told you that the blockchain is actually a distributed ledger. So each node have a copy of a ledger, and the nodes communicate with each other in order to gain agreement. First, if we look at it, a new transaction, when the new transaction happens, it is actually broadcasted to all the nodes. Okay, so each nodes collects a new transaction into a block. Each nodes have the new transaction, and what each node does is that they tries to do a proof of work that if it is not tampered, they just checks it, and and when it does, like it is good enough to get attached to the blockchain. All the like nodes communicate with each other, and they coordinate and see if it is a validate transaction. So the process of gaining this agreement is called consensus, and there are different number of different number of algorithms that are developed for this purpose. So user sends transaction requests to blockchain, and the chain is designed to provide. Once the transaction is completed and it is validated by all the nodes with an agreement, so it gets attached to the blockchain. So nodes express their acceptance of the block by working on creating the next block in the chain using the hash of the accepted block on the previous hash. So they accept it. So if you want to tamper it, you have to like tamper all the nodes chain. Then you have to do a lot of work. So it is like impossible to hack it because it doesn't have a single authority. The network, the nodes, they all, like the network of computers, they all are communicating with each other, and they actually are doesn't care about any other. They have their own algorithm and they just validate among themselves. So what's the hype about it? What's the hype all about Bitcoin and blockchain? So suppose you are booking a movie ticket. So there is a transaction fee that is deducted from it because they are providing a service. The bank is providing that service to make a transaction, or you are like going to the bank and just making a draft, or maybe saving, opening account, like that. You are booking railway tickets, there are also like transaction fees deducted. So if we look at the like distributors of musics like Spotify, Ghana. So blockchain may make selling record music profitable by cutting all the distributors like Apple's or the Spotify, and you can directly make a transaction to artists. The music you buy could even be encoded in blockchain itself, and the amounts are charged will be very small, and the subscription and streaming services will become irrelevant. So, in the financial world, the applications are more obvious. The blockchains will change all the stock exchanges work, loans, insurances, bank accounts. It will eliminate everything. And once the advantage of a safe ledger technology without a transaction fees is understood, like you really understood, then you can do it. So all the systems, financial organization is just there to provide you service, and they just cut the fees out of it. You can directly do it without relying on the like third person or a middleman. So stockbrokers will no longer earn commissions, and you can picture it as a spreadsheet that is duplicated thousands of times across a network of computers, and this network is designed to regularly update this spreadsheet. So this is the way of like using a network, and obviously the blockchain database isn't stored in a single location. Everything is public and very transparent. Easily you can access it on the internet, and it's actually hosted by millions of computers simultaneously. So hacker for the hacker, it is a nightmare. So let's talk about the cryptocurrencies. They are like Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Stellar, Neo. So I hope you got the idea of cryptocurrencies and cryptography and blockchain, how it works. So I would also like to point one thing. So in 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto introduced Bitcoin, and he described as peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So he was the one who introduced it, and he's a billionaire. So let's talk about app development. Uh, you may be knowing what is mobile app development. Let's go to the basic idea. See, you all know why is it so important, because everything is now revolving around smartphones. We can make apps for other devices as well, like desktop app or tablet or anything. But we are focusing on the mobile app because it is very dominant. So you know there are two dominant operating systems right now, that is Android and iOS. So we will talk about those. So there are three types of app: native app, hybrid app, cross-platform app. So if you start with mobile app development, you may be wondering that where should I start from? So what's the difference? Let's look at it. Native app. So when you use, suppose Android and iOS device, you see that both of them has different user interface. It feels different, it works different. It depends on the operating system, right? So native app means native, like it is local, native. So it is platform specific. It just depends on the platform. So if you want to suppose make an app, then you have to hire a Android developer or maybe a iOS developer. So you can't, one person knows Android development as well as the iOS development, but he has to know two languages, Java or Swift, because you can't just code iOS with Java. So for Android development, you have to use Java and Kotlin language. For iOS development, you have to use Objective C or the Swift language. So when you need to download the apps, you what do? You download it from platform specific app stores such as for the Android you download it from Google Play Store, and for the Apple you download it from App Store. So native features of mobile operating system deliver the user experience, and native apps gets access to all the features which is offered by the specific operating systems. So let's look at the pros and cons of it. Pros, it's very high performing because it is platform specific, and it has got full access to operating system specific features like inbuilt features, GPS, cameras, and it gets updated along with the OS. Cons is that you have to use two languages for the respective platforms, and it is dependent on a single platform, no code reusability, very time consuming, and very costly. So the most popular like native app example is WhatsApp. It has different user interfaces for iOS and Android users. So let's talk about hybrid app. Hybrid apps are actually uh, web apps which is in the native. It is actually a wrap in the wrap of native. Suppose Eclair's chocolate. The chocolate inside is the web app and the wrapper is the native app. So if you are already a web developer, you know JavaScript, CSS, HTML5, that it would be easier for you to build a hybrid app. And the best part is that it supports multiple platforms. You don't have to code twice for specific platforms. It can support all the platforms, and you can code in HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. And there are like frameworks, few framework like Apache Cordova or Inex Capacitor, React Native. React Native is new. First, it was the React was introduced by Facebook, and React Native is getting popular nowadays. So, okay, you can also upload them like this apps. You can upload it to app stores and also install them as a native Android or iOS application. So it is actually a hybrid app, but it will feel like native app. Okay, so you can use JavaScript or HTML, CSS to build it. And the pros, if you look at the pros, it is you can just code it once and you reuse it. It is very cheap and suppose multiple platforms or operating system, takes very less time. And the cons are like it is 2 times slower as compared to like cross platform, and it has limited access to inbuilt operating system features. So it is nice, but everything has a disadvantage. Cross platform app. So many developers use hybrid app and cross-platform app words interchangeably. They are same but somewhat different. they support cross-platform app like support multiple platform, and it doesn't depends on the platforms, right? So hybrid apps uses like HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, web, like basically web technologies. So cross-platform apps does, but it actually also involves non-web technologies like frameworks like Xamarin or Flutter. So these are the frameworks. These are non-web technologies which are new. For the Xamarin framework, you can use a C# language in the Flutter. You can use DRT that. So what is a framework? Uh, They are basically just a software or a platform where which will help you to develop apps. So cross-platform supports both web technologies and non-web technologies. So what are the like pros? Of course, code reusability. Just you have to code once and it will run in every platform, and it is very cheap, and almost looks like native and feels like native app, and it got 80% access to device hardware or OS features. Cons is that it is 1.5 uh, times lower as compared to like native app. So the conclusion I make is that if you have got no budget issues, you have got ample amount of time, you have got like want a very good app platform specific, you can go for native app. And you if you have less time, you have budget issues, and so you can go for hybrid or cross platform app. Personally, I like Flutter, and I've developed few apps and it is really nice, so you can go for it. I hope you got the idea and the differences between this. You can just make a choice of your own. So augmented reality and virtual reality. So you have heard about it. These two things are actually very in high demand, and uh, it is actually very. I think it is a future of this industry. So you can go for it. Let's talk about little more about it. Little more. Augmented reality. So what is augmented reality? It is actually a rendering of digital images or data into a real world objects. So it is about using a portable device such as smartphone to add extra details. So you can see the example of Pokemon Go, which was hyped recently, and also Snapchat. You can see how you can bring the objects into your real world, and you can develop these apps. For the virtual reality, it is a you cannot see the future, just meme. Okay, virtual reality refers to the computer generated simulation in which a person can interact within a artificial three-dimensional environment, such as using screen or goggle sensors. So it is an experience that blocks out the physical world, and you can engage into a 3D digital experience with simulation, like you're inside a simulation. So the major difference between the both is that in augmented reality, what you do is that you bring the objects into your world, and in virtual reality, what you do that you go to their world. Yes. So skills required for AR and VR jobs. The I would say that you need to like meet like-minded people. You should go for maybe workshops or hackathons. Meet new people, like-minded people. When I was in like first year, second year, I didn't even know about it. When I went to workshops, hackathons, I got to know about it, and I like met very really good people. So you should move and try to build a good network and meet some people, so you can discuss about it. So first you need to ideas about it. You can download some AR apps try out a variety of VR headsets, motion sensors to get an idea how it works. Okay, so if you look at it and you experience it, you can get the idea of it. So you can also develop a game out of it. So working with AR VR platforms. So what are the platforms you can use to develop this apps, AR VR apps? So you can use Unity and Unreal Engine. These are the most popular sites, and it is also used for develop gaming. There are online tutorials, and also you can look off on other platforms like Amazon, Sumerian, and Google AR Code. So for building the like AR, VR, so what do you need? You need assets, right? So there are a lot of animations, 3D models you need. So you can make it using Blender, and you can for the VR you also need to like concentrate on the audio software development. So these two are really roles are really heavy on technology, so it helps to know how to code in like Java or C or C++. The software development skills can help you to help your resume to stand out. You can build a portfolio and start building a mini projects like many projects and try and work it out. You can go for making build big projects along with your like-minded people and just show it off on the portfolio. You can like present it in front of the like interviewer, so it will help a lot. So software the like most AR apps run on mobile app platforms, so knowledge of maybe a Android software development kit or iOS SDK is a good thing. So I hope you got the idea, the basic idea of the technologies and the fields I've discussed. I would ask Shagnik to continue from here and then I will conclude the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Alisha. So first of all, thanks to Developer Student Club Techno International Bhatnagar for inviting me, and very good morning, I will say. Good morning to all the participants who are here. So I will start from the web development part. So let me just present my screen. Yeah. Alisha, is visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Good afternoon, Rahul. Yeah. So I'm starting from now. Yeah. So my first point is development. So Alisha already said about Android app development. So I will start from web development. So web development, the concept of web development is too much strong. And one thing I want to say, I see web development just like civil engineering, because see the term website. What is web? Web is the internet, and site is a place you are visiting to, right? So a website is you are visiting a place on the internet. That is website. So what is website development? Website development is building the website. Website development is understanding the part and building the website. So let me show you something very interesting. How a website, you can inspect a website. You know, there are people who go for site inspection. So let's say I'm going to Flipkart. So here, say this is a nice laptop from HP, and so you want that 63,990. So everything is coded here. So if everything is coded, you can change everything here. So let's say I gone to inspect elements, and if under inspect element I change the amount, it will change. See, I change it to Shagnik, and it changed to Shagnik. So why this happened? So does it change in the Flipkart server? No. So that's where the concept of client side and server side comes. Client can do anything. Client can inspect the website, inspect the site. Say you are going to visit a building. So when you are going to visit the building, you can touch the walls, you can suggest the civil engineer something, but if he doesn't do that, then it cannot be changed. So here I can change anything, anything. Here it is says rupee, and I can say here is Mutro. Yes, I can change anything. I can say it to 00. So you see in the social media, there are screenshots that this product has price drop, there must be some issue. No, some engineer, he went to the website, he inspected the site and does this trick. So this is how the website works. So the interface that you are viewing is the front end. The front end means the thing that is in the front. You are viewing it, that is the front side. And what works behind everything, that what manages the database and what manages the website is the backend. So let me come to the slide. Come to the slide again. So these are just description, nothing more. The website development is building and maintenance of the website, what I already told, and it is the work that happens behind the scene, that is the backend. Now it is written that the field of web development is generally broken into front end and backend. So what does a web developer do? So what I did was the client side, and what they did was the server side. So what client side scripting? The client side scripting is what the client will see. When the client will visit your website, what the client will see is the client side scripting. And what they did from their database, say Flipkart is adding another laptop to their website, say LinkedIn is adding another profile to their website. So that is called server side scripting. They are adding that user, and the interface that they're seeing is the client side scripting. I can see that if I can change the image URL, I can change the image, but once I refresh, it changes. And the third point is obviously database technology, because if you don't have the hosting, if you don't have the database, then the website cannot be managed. You can see the website, you can visit the website, but if you want to register some data, if you want to fetch some data, then the data must be somewhere. So that is the database. So first of all, I'm doing the cross section. So cross section, what is the part of developing? So there are mainly three types of developer: front-end developer, back-end developer, and full stack developer. These are nothing, these are just bookish terms. Front-end developer means who deals with front-end, back-end developer deals with back-end, and full stack developer deals with both. So what is front-end development? What I already told you, front-end development is the client-side scripting. It is converting the data to a graphical interface. Say you are coding in HTML, you are designing in CSS, and you are animating in JavaScript. So these are the languages we mainly use, and there are also you have heard many times Bootstrap. What is Bootstrap? Bootstrap is nothing but maintaining the website and making it responsive. What is responsive? This is called responsive. This laptop, whichever format it goes, tab, mobile, website, laptop, whatever, it stays in the correct orientation. So that is called responsiveness, and that is what Bootstrap is. So the field of front-end development is generally broken down into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is the coding part, basically the scripting part. CSS is the designing part, and JavaScript is the animation part. So what does a front-end developer do? A front-end developer basically architects and develops the website front-end with HTML, CSS, DOM, and JavaScript. So HTML is what I already told, that defines the structure of the web, defines the structure, the script of the web. CSS is creates and defines the page aesthetic, how the page will look. You can write anything on the website, but if you want it to be in middle, if you want it to be blue or white or anything, then you have to do the CSS part. And JavaScript is nothing but the animation part. And after that, so let's see. After that, the elements. So what goes inside the front-end development? So what things need to be done if you want a good front-end, if you want to be a good front-end developer? So code editor. So code editor is the most vital thing, because there is a software called VS Code provided by Microsoft. In that software, there is an option called live share. What live share does? If you code there, the live output will be there. That will be so much helpful. But there are some code editors that don't provide that. So you have to code and you have to save that. You have to go into HTML file and check it. So that is very much tedious work. So while starting front-end development, you have to choose which code editor you want. So after code editor, there is version control systems. So what is version control system? Let me tell you in Paint. That will be great, I guess. So let's say this is your first. This is the first thing you coded, and you change something, send it to B, and send it to C, and this is your final D. So now what happens? There was some problem with B. So while you transform A to B and B to C, then you met final C to D. But there was some problem in B. So what can you do? Do we code it again to the A format? No. So the version control system, what does is stores the A and then does the changes. So that's where the concept of GitHub comes. So GitHub does what? It recognize the version, which version you say you did something in 28th August, did something in 29th August and 30th August. So if you want to return back to the 28th August, then that is possible. So that is basically the version control system. And after that come the front-end assets. The front-end assets is nothing but the CSS, and there are some frameworks that work into the website that makes the developing more easier. And there is CSS. I already told you CSS is the designing part, and there are JavaScript libraries. So the JavaScript does the animation part, and there are some animation. Let's say you have seen in, I guess, many websites that there is a particle animation. Some particles are moving, and if you click, the particles will spread. So that is called the JavaScript animation. So there are some preloaded libraries in JavaScript which you can use. And after that, like same HTML, CSS frameworks, there comes JavaScript framework, and there are some developer tools like Visual
Shamik,
Studio. Yeah. Yeah,
Shamik,
Alicia.
sorry to interrupt. Can you go a bit slow?
Okay. Yeah.
They are asking to go slow. Okay.
Okay.
Can continue.
So there are the developer tools you can use. So let's say Microsoft is providing Visual Studio and Google is providing, and some more websites are providing some tools that you can use online or offline to make the things bit easier. So that is the developer tools. And online coding environment, there are websites like CodePen and many others, which you can code there online. You can code simultaneously HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and see the output. So after that comes backend development. So what is backend development? Backend development is basically the development from server side. So what is the server side? The server side is when the developer manages the data, when the developer uploads some data and manages the data, an application and a database and a server. So that is basically the backbone of the website. What we see is the front side, but there is always a back side that manages everything. So the quotation is the machinery that works behind the limelight. We don't see the backend part, but the backend is the backbone. If backend is not there, the frontend means nothing. Of course, frontend is important, but if backend is not there, then it means nothing. So what does the backend developer do? So backend developer basically focuses on the database, scripting, and the architecture of the website. Code written by backend developers to communicate to database information to the browser. So if you want to access the database, being a developer, if you want to access the database, then you have to contact the backend developer who manages the database. And let's say you are going to a website, you are filling a form, and the form is stored in, and the form is coded in PHP format. When that gets updated and that gets uploaded, that is done by backend developers. That setting is done by backend developers. And there are some elements, obviously. So backend is basically what I already told: database and management. Managing the database and managing everything, that is backend. And also there are frameworks in backend. There are many coding platforms that you can do the backend works, and there are frameworks there. And there are web server technologies, some cloud computing integration. I will tell cloud computing in the next part. And operating system, because the operating system you are trying to mention here, the backend side, the web application or the desktop application must run on the operating system. So you must fix that. Obviously there is content management, because someone is submitting that if you didn't do the content management, that will not get stored. After that, system development and maintenance. Developing the system doesn't mean your work is over. You have to maintain the system. If there is some server crash or if there is some data leak problem, you have to fix that. And also API integration. API integration, you can call any public API or any private API if you have that access. And after calling that API, the works become easy doing some work. Let's say you are doing the OCR, the optical image recognition. So doing that, if you call that particular API, the things become easier. And obviously the security settings, or what Alicia already told, that the hackers are there. So you have to do the security of the server, the encryption of your website very good, so that it can manage everything. And obviously the backup and restore of the website file. If you don't have the backup and restore of the website file, if your portal crashes, then there would be a problem. So being a backend developer, you have to keep in mind that I have to store all the data and all the website files somewhere. And there is full stack developer. Full stack developer is nothing. Full stack developer is basically front end plus back end. One who does both the front end job and the back end job. The front end technology and the back end technology, the database, server, API, and the designing of the website, everything is done by the full stack developer. So this is like full stack developer translate the whole user requirement. He doesn't need another support. A front-end developer needs the back-end developer to manage the database. A back-end developer needs the front-end developer to manage the interface. But a full-stack developer is independent. So now comes game development. So video game developers are a special kind of developers because they create the video games that we play. They create the video games that we enjoy. A website we may visit every day, but a game, when we play the game, it have to be smooth. A website can crash once or twice, but if the game crashes, if the game is not playable, then that will not be okay. So what does a game developer do? A game developer has to be very good with math. Why? Because you have to calculate everything. Because when you are, let's say you are developing a game, you have to be in a portal, you have to be in an engine. There are basically two engines, Unity engine. Okay, I'm making the screen full. One sec. So is it visible now, Alisha? The full screen?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah. So what a game developer do? Game developer has to be good with math skills, because say if you're playing a game, I'm giving an example. You are playing a game, you are going through a path. So you have to make the polar axis and all the axes perfect. So you have to good with math, and also you have to good with your programming skills. And when you are trying to do the video game development, you have to keep in mind that your video game can run on any server, can run on any OS. You have that basic requirement that if you want to play my game, your PC or laptop should fill this requirement. But if the basic requirement fills, then your code should be more than enough to handle anything, any crashes, any pressure on the game, or any pressure on the server. So we have to manage that. So here are the elements. So what goes inside the game development? So you have to look at the design specification, and that is done by the video game designers. So you have to write write a readable code. If you are designing and someone else will manage that, you have to write a readable code, so such that the designer's concept can be totally converted into a playable game. And also what I already told, application program interface, API. API is a set of pre-built commands. So you can call that, you can use that, that is already done before. You can do that, and you can share your game, and you can share that particular thing which is done by calling that API. So that makes things easier. So the programming the game's terrain, so that is obviously. And next, the programming artificial intelligence for non-player characters within the game. So if there are characters which is not controlled by you, but some AI is controlling them, then you have to program them beautifully, because according to your movement, their movement should also change. So this is basically the development part. Next, I'm shifting to the hot cake, like the machine learning. So machine learning is basically teaching the future. So why I'm saying teaching the future? Because in the future, everything will be done by computers. So machine learning is a field of study that gives the computer the capability to run without being explicitly programmed. So let's say I'm giving an example. There is a square, and in that square, let's say we are, one second, if I can. So let's say this is a city. This square is this rectangle is a city, and some of your friends, they are here. Some of your friends, they are here, and some of your friends, they are here. Okay, so let's say these are friends A friends, and these are B friends. So if you are going to this place, so obviously you are going to somewhat A friends, and if you are going to this place, you are somewhat going to B friends. But what if you are going to this place? That's where the concept of machine learning comes. The computer has to understand. So what can the computer do? The computer can draw a circle. The computer can draw a circle and see that in that nearest radius, what comes. So in that nearest radius, basically the red lines and the red points are there. So you can consider this as a B place. So that is the concept of basically machine learning. So that is, machine learning is not that easy, but I have just given like short example. So as I said, machine learning is basically teaching the future. So it is evident from the name that the computer will do the tasks like humans. So we will train them. So let's say in the example on the side, a strawberry is coming, and we are telling the computer the attributes of the strawberry. So what is the strawberry is, what length will be it, and after the computer learns that, what he does, he takes a strawberry, he sees the attributes and what he was previously supervised. So he says that, okay, so I'm predicting this as you taught me. So this should be 2 centimeter, this should be 5 centimeter, this should be 8 centimeter. So this is basically the concept of machine learning. And what it's inside the machine learning. So what things divides machine learning into different parts. So handling the machine's ability can also be approached in different ways. So first of all, supervised learning. So supervised learning is what? So you have to classify. And then you have to teach that machine that you have to do this. If you see A, you will conclude B. Then the machine learns that. And what is unsupervised learning? Unsupervised learning is machine has some pre-done data sets, and machine reads that and understand what should be done, and then does that. He clusters the data, he classifies the data and does that. And there is also reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning basically taking real-time decisions. So let's say the machine have to, in a game, the machine has to take a real-time AI decision. So you are shooting a player, you're shooting an AI player, so you have to move from this place to this place. So that is basically done by the reinforcement learning. So the machine cannot ask you that developer, he is doing that, so what should I do? He has to take the real-time decision. So that's where the concept of reinforcement learning comes. There are also another thing like dimensionality reduction and natural language processing. Natural language processing is basically under that. Let's say your mobile, you are sending SMS to users. So understanding the SMS short forms. So Google in Google Play Store, there is an application and there are many reviews. And when you go through that reviews, if you does the natural language processing, you can see how many people wrote awesome, how many people wrote bad. So that is done through the natural language processing. And there is also neural network. Neural network will come in the deep learning part. So first of all, this is the basics. This is not anywhere near the field itself. This is just the basic. We are just covering the basics to help anyone who is there who cannot decide what he should do next. So that is for them. So don't like, this is not an if we are telling machine learning, we will code that. No. So let's come to the next part. So data science. So data science is what? So you are having a data, you are having an Excel sheet, and you have the data, but you have to conclude something. You have to approach to that data. So that's where the concept of data science comes. So data science, what does? Data science, the methods, using scientific methods, it does some predefined processes. It uses its algorithm and extract the information. And the data must not be structured data. It may be unstructured data, but data extract the data and analyze that. Data mining. Data mining is basically analyzing the pre-existing data. So this is basically data science. And what do data scientists do? So what I already told you, data scientist captures the data, extracts the data, he maintains it, he put it under some algorithm and some processes, and communicate with the user or the company that sent the data. He communicate with them and finally analyze and prepare the report of the data. So now, pillars of data science. So data science in any field just cannot be done by computer science. It has some other dependencies too. So you have to be sure which business or which domain is your data coming from. So if it's the IT industry data, that will be different. If it's non-IT industry data, that will be different. And after business and domain, which is very much obvious, mathematics. Because without statistics and probability, no data science scientist can conclude any data. And after that, computer science. Yes, computer science, the basis of data science is computer science. So computer science comes, and also communication. So communication is too much important with data science, because when you are extracting a data and you are analyzing it, so after analyzing, you have to communicate with the user from which the data came. You have to analyze that, sir, this happened with the data. This is the fault of the data. This is the prediction that this might happen. In your stock market, I analyzed your stocks. So this might happen next. So that is the communication part. So business, mathematics, computer science, and communication. So you have to be very clear what you are analyzing, how you analyzing, why you analyzing, and how you are approaching the user after analyzing. So now AI. So AI is basically a simulation of our human brain. We are teaching the machine to mimic our actions, and we are teaching what should he do, which song should he play when we ask what face should he recognize, what fingerprint should we recognize, what robot should he do, what healthcare treatment recommendation, what when you are using some application, what resource should he recommend, what smart assistant should he collaborate. So that is all depend on the artificial intelligence. So see where AI can be used. So you can get more interest in AI. If you want to work with AI, you can do work in these fields. So backend smart application like Siri and Alexa. So these are now very famous because just some few comments and they understand and they recommend us even. And disease mapping and prediction tools, and manufacturing and drone robots. So the robots can understand your command, and the back end of it is the artificial intelligence and the healthcare treatment recommendation. So in the software, so in the website, you can see that whenever you are like submitting a survey or you are doing a registration for a treatment, and when he analyzes your data, he suggests you that you should take this test, and after that, the conversational bots for marketing services. So you are going to any marketing website, there are chat bots, there are such suggest bot that where should you invest. So that is for the conversational bots and the robo advisors. So what I already said, the stock trading. So in stock trading, there are some AI bots that analyze the real-time data and some previous data and sends you and say you, sir, you can invest in this, you can analyze this. And also what you already see in Gmail, there is a spam filter. The spam emails and the promotion email already go to the spam section. And also social media monitoring tools. What Mark Zuckerberg said in 2018, that Facebook is like now filling with false news. So he will embed the AI and manage it. So it is 50% done, as he said in the last Congress conference. And after that, song or TV recommendation. So this is our daily task. Like you are using Spotify, you are using Ghana, you are using JioSaavn. So you get recommendation. So let's say you are hearing two soulful Bengali songs or two soulful English or Hindi songs. So the next time they create a AI generated playlist for you. And also what Alisha already told you, the ethical hacking and the cyber security part. The security system, it is obvious, the face recognition and the fingerprint recognition and some forensics, cyber forensics. So that all depends on the security system that is done by the AI. And why AI is so special? So why the concept of AI is so groundbreaking? Because AI automates the repetitive learning and discovery to the data. So let's say you have to do something again and again and again. So, but if the AI learns, but if the machine learns that, okay, if this happens, I should do this for the next time. So that work into 100 becomes the only one work. You only train once, and after that, the AI does itself. So that's where the second part comes. The AI has its own intelligence. If you teach it, it can grow intelligence. And also AI adapts to progressive learning algorithms. So if you are teaching it progressive learning algorithms, if you are teaching it new algorithms and new aspects, so it learns in that way. It gets supervised in that way. And after that, AI analyzes more and deeper data. So AI is something which it doesn't like only the upper portion and not going in the deep. AI go to the deep, and after going to the deep, it analyzes what happens in the ground layer, and after analyzing the ground layer, it comes to the top layer. And also, if AI is particularly and clearly taught about that concept, it can achieve incredible accuracy. So we have already seen that in breast cancer data diagnosis, what a paper was published in 2019, I guess 19 November, or I'm not sure, some German scientist, and his accuracy level was 97.2%. So that was groundbreaking. He also said that I had some mistakes, so if I did that also right, so the accuracy can be more increased. So you are seeing that AI and machine learning both can does this much accurate jobs that can help us in so much way. And also AI gets the most out of the data, as I already told you, that it analyzes from the ground level and come to the top. So now comes the concept of deep learning. So deep learning is basically understanding the unstructured. So what deep learning does, what our human brain does, human brains can detect objects. It can recognize speech. If someone is speaking in Bengali, we can understand that. And if we meet one person, the next time he calls on phone, we understand that this person is speaking. And translating language, making the decisions. So deep learning can do this. So deep learning, what does, we give an input. So as you see in the car is giving an input, and it extract the features, it extracts the attributes, and then classify and make a decision the next time the car comes. A red car and a blue car, or say let's say a dog and a cat come. So it analyze the attributes. It analyze what attributes come, and when the next time, I guess the cats and dogs example is in the next. Yes. So in the and here he analyzes the deep learning analyzes the features of the dogs and the cats, and then he extract those features and analyzes those features to give the output that the next time you upload an image, that or the next time you upload some data, it can say whether it is a dog or a cat. So what can be done with deep learning? So these are the real time works that can be done by deep learning. So colorization of black and white images, adding sounds to silent movies. So deep learning analyze what movements they are doing, and then he can add sounds. And we already seen the third point many times, the automatic machine translation. And also object classification in photographs, the example in the right side. Automatic handwriting generation, there is already a website which has done that if you can, if you send any text, and if you register each and every letter how you write it, if you can take a picture or and upload there, they can generate the handwriting, they can generate your whole handwriting. So let's say you have to submit an assignment handwritten, so what you can do, you can just simply copy paste from Geek4Geeks or Stack Overflow and upload to that website. He can convert it totally to the handwriting. Now it's 90% accurate but not 100%. And also character test generation, and also image caption generation, which when you are seeing an image or video, it automatically generates the caption for that image or caption for the video. So that can be done with the deep learning. And automatic game playing, so there are many examples in YouTube, and my favorite examples is it can be done easily. I haven't done it, but I have seen my friends who have done that the Chrome game, the Chrome dinosaur game, it can be easily played with deep learning and some tweaks and tricks. It can be easily played automatically, and he scored at least 995 or 4 there. So now the obvious part that must come here, the robotics and automation. Because already in Techno India University, Sophia came and it amazed everyone. It has even human emotions. If someone said, I love you, and he said, I don't have that emotion. So he understands that he's saying I love you, and she understands that she don't have that emotion. So robotics and automation is will types of robot is pre-programmed robots, which are already pre-programmed, to do something. You cannot do more. You cannot train them. So next come the humanoid robots. So you can train them. You can teach them some different works, and they can do that for that. And also autonomous robots that they work themselves. So they are in your house, and they are taught to do some things, and they can do it automatically. So that is the autonomous robots. And they are also teleoperated and augmenting robots. So teleoperated is you can control the robot from a different place, and it can do the work staying at your home. And also augmenting robots is basically generating a like image, or generating a basically replica of it in a place, and he can does that job after seeing that. So where can they be used? So I don't need that slide, because you already know the robots are used in so many ways, like helping fight forest fires, surgical assistance, like food order delivery. Everything can be done by robots now, and also drone. So in one way, we can say that drone is also a kind of robot, because it accepts the commands, and also assisting with finding items and carry them through their warehouses, using during search and rescue missions and natural disaster. And also which is very much used by robot, landmine detectors. It can detect in a war zone, after analyzing the radius, that where the landmine is. So now comes my favorite part, the designing part. So basically there are many types of designing. So first of all, UI and UX designing. So this is the most confusing part. People often confuse it with UI and UX designing. So are they same? No. UI means user interface and UX means user experience. So UI designing does the graphical layout. UI designing does the image part, the designing part, the interface designing part, the transition part, the screen part, the interaction part. Every visual element is done by the UI design. And what the UX design does, what the user experience design does, it interact with the user. It smoothen and it navigate the app. So after clicking which button, you will go to which place. After clicking which thing, you will be redirected to which place. So that is done by the UX designing part. So what does a UX or UI or UX designer do? So basically they design the interface of the app or the website, keeping in mind the user's perspective. See, designing is something you totally do for users. If the user is not attracted to your design, say I have prepared a presentation. If the user is not attracted to the presentation, what's the point of designing that? If you are designing a logo, which makes no sense. If you are designing a logo of a food company, and you are designing something which has no contact with the food thing, so that makes no sense. So user's perspective to approach towards the particular platform, the particular user, the particular target audience that you are approaching. So you have to keep in mind with that. So what UX or UI designer does, they does the user research. So that I just told you, user research, which type of users, what target audience will they approach. And second of all, the visual design. So what design will the user see, what can be more comfortable for the user. And the information architecture, how the infographics can be designed, how the information can be embedded in the website that it will be interactive. And the fourth point is That only, that interactive design. Sorry, I wrote interaction, it will be interactive. The interactive design. So if the design is not interacting, it makes no sense. And also branding. Example of branding is here also, developer student club. And in what differs it from the other UI or UX design that don't have branding, that everyone can use that. But if you have that branding, if you have that uniform use of the logo. So let's say I'm taking the example of Google only. So in the whole slide, there are 6 to 7 colors which are used. You can go through the whole slide. There are 6 to 7 colors and the 6 to 7 hex code that are used. This is called the uniformity of the design. This is called the interactive design, and this is called the visually impaired design. So what? Sorry. What is a visually impaired design? A visually impaired design is a design which you are looking, and that is so clumsy that you don't need to open the website. So the backend is awesome, but if the interface is not good, the user will not get attracted. There are many websites that they look so dumb that user don't go there, but those websites are so good. So how you can get into UI and UX? I got many messages to talk about it. So first of all, you have to familiarize with the UI principles. So what I always told you, that if you are, so if I say you in a few examples. So if you are doing a presentation, always make the font same for everything. Each and everything, make the font same. Some people think that if I make this font blue, this font green, this font something, this font A, B, C, anything, so that will look good. No, the consistency, the typography, the contrast, what you are doing. So let's say in this example, the color, the balance, the contrast, everything have to be uniform. And after that, learn the creative UX process. You have to research what you are doing. You have to research what you are doing, and then you have to implement that vision, the idea, and also you have to think what you are designing. If you're not thinking what you are designing, so let's say if in this place I put some random graphics, I put some random PNG file, would that be great? No, that won't be great. And if you can see that in the background of this, I don't know if you can see or not, how you can get into UI and UX. In the background there is a UI UX design app. So that makes the design beautiful, that makes the design more attractive. If you are using something which makes no sense, I designed some presentation in first year, I can't believe how did I thought of designing them. That makes no sense. And also you develop your eye. That my sir always told me, Shagnik, you have to develop your eye first. What is looking good? No one can tell you except you. What is approaching to the eye? And there are many platforms, Dribbble, Behance, Patterns, One Page Love, and many more. These are just some examples. There are many more sites for designing. So they does awesome designing, the Dribbble and Behance part. In the Behance website, the awesome thing is world's most top designers are in Behance. And you have to read design articles every day. Why you should read design articles every day? If you want to be a good designer, you have to read what other designers are saying. Because in the most design articles, the designer don't boast them. The designer says where he went wrong. So that how it, at least me, I read Medium as Smashing magazine, but I don't read SidePoint. But I heard that it is very good, so I also included it. And also design fake or clone projects. So if you are thinking that why should I design a Twitter clone, a YouTube clone? No, if you are designing the Twitter or YouTube clone, if you are designing a big website or big platforms clone, then that will help you understanding the 1 to 4 all the parts. And also learn the latest web design tools. I am also learning them. Sketch, Figma, XD, Illustrator, InVision. I guess Figma and XD will be more than enough, but if you want to learn the others, you can learn them. And also mentor and get mentored. Send your design to other people and see what they are saying. And also mentor other people. What you learn today, teach tomorrow. And next, the computer animation part. So after watching the movies, everything, this is pretty clear that now in today's world, without graphics designing, without computer animation, no movies can be done. Like such beautiful scenes in Marvel movies, Marvel or DC movies, they are just made through the computer animation. So now the computer animations application. So I'm not getting in the details of the computer application. You already know that animation is generating a set of images, and a set of different perspective of images and different view of images, and combining them into a same thing and then making an animation. So you can see that you can see that there is a continuous shot in some mobiles. So what that continuous shot does, it takes, let's say, 20 pictures in a second or 30 pictures in a second, and you when play that image one by one by one, so that makes the animation. So animation is made by that only. So computer animation application can be in education, can be in demonstration, can be in marketing, cartoon. Everything is pretty obvious here. And these are the interface of the computer animation. And now VFX. So what should I say about VFX? Like after watching Avenger Endgame, so I'm not not going into the movie field, but after watching Avenger Endgame, I read a lot about VFX. So how beautifully the things are done. So that cannot be done in real time. When movies where shooting cannot be done in real life, that is done by VFX only. Amazing. The computer generated imagery, what is called the CGI, the CGI and VFX combination is so good that the games feel so real now. So I don't know you played Red Dead Redemption 2 or not, but the animations there, like in a scene, I'm just giving an example, this might be a little boring if you are not in gaming. So there is a scene where a person rides out from the horse and someone stabs him with a knife, and the blood, the animation of the blood, how the blood is flowing is exceptional. So that is all done by the VFX and the game and graphics designing. So now where VFX can be used, so VFX can be used in movies. So there are some examples, so how VFX are being used. So creating artificial character, what I already told you in AI part, that superheroes avatar, so which character you are not handling, so creating them is VFX and AI. And creating games also, designing graphics for movies and games, and blending and masking, and adding After Effects to the video. And for the After Effects, Adobe After Effects is used. It is pretty much obvious. And the resources, the software you can use to learn VFX and motion graphics, Adobe After Effects, 3GX Max, Bojo. The Bojo application is one thing I can say, that if you are using Bojo, make sure that you have a great laptop. I installed the Bojo application, and my laptop was heated enough to fry an omelette. And there is Maxon Cinema 4D, Autodesk Maya, Mocha, Nuke, and Synthesize. So Synthesize is a new application. I don't know it. I just saw it today. So I just put it. I saw some reviews. And now coming to a different slide. This is the last part. So cloud computing. So now I think you all heard three terms: AWS, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. So the cloud is like reigning the world now. So why cloud is so famous? Because cloud computing provide you the data, provide you the storage on demand. You hire the data for 1 month and you can access that. And especially data storage, the cloud storage. And you don't need that much computing power. The cloud provides you. And without direct active management by the user does not have to be directly managing it actively. The cloud manages it, and you have to pay for the term when you are using it. So in the next slide, I'm not very good at like sketching, so I drew this on the pen and paper and took a screenshot. I don't know if it's visible or not. So basically, cloud computing, as you all like, this is pretty obvious. Like if you have to use the cloud, you have to build a virtual machine. So this structure is followed by Microsoft, and also the I'm saying Microsoft because Microsoft provide us with the softwares, and we are like familiar with their software, not other softwares now. So there are the racks of servers. So let's say, what are these? So these are the racks of servers. So racks of servers is where the data is stored. So each server is a hypervisor. So what is the hypervisor? A supervisor who is supervising the project or supervising something. A hypervisor is seeing the hypervisor is managing the databases, and when something is needed, he also provides that and selects that. And from the racks of servers, there are some fabric controllers. So the fabric controllers connect to the network switch. So which network should they provide? The fabric controller relates the rack server and the network switch. So these things are basically not important. What important is basically what is the flow, in what flow the cloud activated. So the network switch goes to the orchestrator. What is the orchestra? Orchestra is basically someone is instructing and the other musicians are playing. So the instructor is managing the orchestra. The man who is managing the orchestra, he is basically managing everything. So that is basically orchestrator. Orchestrator managing everything that is happened is Azure, not Azure, basically cloud platform, using the user request and also application interface API. So the API is called and it goes to the portal. So in the portal, we can go to the portal only. So in the picture below right. So what happens? So you request for a virtual machine or you request for a data, you request for a server, and how you get the server. So the process is written here. So the user makes the request to create a virtual machine. It comes to the portal. The web API is called the orchestrator that manages everything. It seeds the packages, and it takes the base server rack using the network switch that is held by the fabric controllers and sends the packages request to fabric controllers. Fabric controllers takes the particular data or particular package from server rack, and it requests to the fabric controller request, and it creates the fabric controller with in collaboration with the hypervisor, creates the virtual machine, and now the user can connect to the VM or the virtual machine. So types of cloud computing: SaaS, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and function as a service. 1 second. Sorry. 1 second. Sorry, there were some issues in my laptop. Sorry, just pardon me. Yes, and then the types of the cloud. So the SaaS, the SaaS, IaaS, PaaS, and FaaS. So these are the basically service. What kind of service they are providing? So it is a software service, it is a platform based service, it is a function based service, or it is a web or cloud or infrastructure based service. So now the types of cloud. So they are like defining themselves only. Public cloud. The public cloud is open to the user. The user can access, and the portal they are in, the portal can manage everything. And the private cloud is, it is private to the organization. And what is hybrid cloud? Hybrid cloud is basically the combination of public and private. The hybrid clouds, the management and the access can be switched from public to private according to the need of the user. So now the next slide, we can see that what is basically what I already told you: IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and FaaS. Basically, FaaS, the function as a service, so that is not used in many places, so I omitted that. And so what stays in the on-premise? What stays in the main case? So application, data, runtime, middleware, operating system, virtualization, servers, storage, and networking. IaaS or infrastructure as a service, there you can manage application, data, runtime, middleware, and OS. So remember, you cannot attempt to do the virtualization, cannot manage the server, the storage, and the networking. So that is managed by others, the other providers or the other managers, so that they are managing. And in the platform, only application and data you can manage, and in the software, everything is managed by others. So there are some big companies which use them. So SaaS used by BigCommerce, Google Apps, Salesforce, Dropbox. So you can see these examples here. PaaS is used by AWS, Azure, OpenShift, Apache Store. So what I told you, the handwritten copy, so that was an example of PaaS. an IaaS example is AWS EC2. AWS EC2 is the newest version, and the Rackspace Google Computing in GCE, basically DigitalOcean Magneto 1 Enterprise Edition. So these I just took from the internet. There is no my creativity here. So thank you everyone. That's from my side. Over to Alisha.
Thank you so much, Shagnik. You have explained everything so well. Guys, do you have any questions? After that, I conclude the session. You may ask. Don't ask hard questions, please. Okay. Okay, so I suppose no one has any question. Just to clear that, no one knows everything. Okay. If you hear someone saying that I know everything, I know everything, I know every technology, every field, that person is lying. That person is stupid. So I hope you got maybe an interest of maybe one or two field of interest. So just meet that mind. I'm just in the field of app development and web development. Shaknik in his designing and web development, I suppose, and he's very good at it. So everyone has their field of interest. So you're not like, don't pressurize yourself to learn everything. You just need to know or knowledge about everything. Get a teaser, get a trailer, and know you will get to know where to dig. Okay, I know you guys like all these technologies are very overwhelming, but the aim of this event was to explore most of the fields and get to know where your interest lies. I'm sure that you have got one, maybe more than one. Okay. So start researching in your field of interest, start digging up, read papers and see tutorials, and start building mini projects. Okay. Don't overstep, don't try to like look at the summit of the like mountain, just look at the steps, look at the like what are there any stones or there any pebbles, just look at that, follow the path and you will reach the summit. And always take mini steps. And when we start to code, we start from hello world, right? So just like that, you have to select one field or two maybe and start building mini projects. I would also like to point out some core concepts of computer science are not the, it is not the technology field, but the concepts you need to like study really. That is data structures and algorithms, networking, a database management system, operating system, and OOPS concept. You need to be very clear about it. Start coding, start practicing every day. Make a habit of practicing at least one, like some, every day. Make a schedule. Maybe give 2 hours for coding and rest of like hours for your projects. Reach out to people, ping in the groups like, hey, you are you interested in this field? I'm looking for someone who is interested. Then you can just join and collaborate with them and learn data structures and algorithms. I mean, sorry, learn, understand it very well, and try to do competitive programming. You can go for Lead Code, Hackathon Code, Code Chef, and gain stars. Don't try to be like show off. Like, don't be show off. It's just a very bad thing to do. Just compare yourself with your older self. That's it. You don't have to compare yourself with others. You will open your LinkedIn, you will find yourself depressing and just like tucking your face into a pillow crying. I know, I have been there, but just don't bother. You look at yourself, what you have been in the past 1 month and what is your progress. That's it. That's the only thing that matters and nothing else. So make a schedule 1 hour for coding maybe, and the other 2 to 3 hours for project. Build mini projects, make a portfolio, and go for bigger projects. So you have to do this simultaneously. And I have like maybe 2 rupees advice, you can say. So first of all, number one, get comfortable with failure and rejections. You got to be comfortable with rejections, failure. You will face it. Really, this is a universal truth. You have to face it. There is success, there is failure. If you want to like publish like 10 apps or 20 apps, maybe one app will get successful. This is the truth. So never get disheartened. You have, if you want to be successful, you just have to and clean up all the failures, learn all the failures, then only you will reach to that like success. Number 2, make use of every opportunity you will get. Many opportunities, just go on the program, scholarships, and apply. But also, whenever someone tells you that do this, this is good, do that, this is good, don't try to say yes, yes, I will do it. No, please try. You should learn to say no. You should learn to say yes. You know where to say yes, where to say no. Okay, you need to know the difference. And don't, number 3, don't be a dead fish in the river. Number 4, also when you, there will be a time come when you will get respect, your social status will get increased, you will get recognized. That is very nice. But social status and respect will also be the reason for you to not try out things. Yes, so you will get afraid of getting failed, getting judged, and people are like respecting me, why should I try, I will get failed. So these are also the like, maybe you will, this will held you back from trying. So don't bother about it, just stay happy, just be yourself. And yeah, people are respecting it, it's nice thing, but we gotta be like, come out of the shell and always try and like be comfortable with failures. And number 5, do what makes you happy. That's the like best part. Do what makes you happy, nothing else. Okay. And number 6, don't compare yourself. I've already told you that, don't compare. No matter what, don't compare yourself. Just compare yourself with yourself. And don't just, yeah, many don't just take certificates and collect it, make a stack out of it. Don't do it. You can collect certificates, it matters somewhat, but no. I have recently saw one girl, she actually did like 100 certificate course and she was boosting around. I found that very like very stupid, because if you're collecting certificates, you're not implementing it, and what's the use? uh, you're just doing it, you're just learning it, you're not implementing it, there is no action. So whatever the course you're taking, whatever the certificates, whatever you're doing, just build a mini project or a project out of it which you have learned, and then show off that project, not the certificate. And another was, respect your personal space. Don't mix your workspace and your personal space, because it is very important to make a difference. Otherwise, you will get like insane. Give importance to your family, friends, and also your professionals, colleagues, and friends, because you have to maintain that like line. And next thing is, have faith, not expectations. Have faith, hope, but never expect. Like, don't expect high things. Just be in your like limits. Be grounded. Just do your work and have faith. That's it. So yeah, many have students have asked me, like, when I start to do something, I just lose interest, or I become lazy. So it happens when you don't have a purpose, don't have a reason to do it. Why are you doing it? You should have a reason, should have a purpose. What's a life without a purpose? So maybe my purpose is to go to the North Pole and maybe like sleep on the ice, maybe snow. So I want to buy a telescope. I want to like want my mother to take my mother to Maldives. So this is these are my reasons. I want to earn. So yours should be some reason to do it. Build a reason, that reason should reason should stuck in your mind, and you will never lose interest or feel lazy. You will just think, oh, I don't have a time about it. So yeah, you should have a reason, a purpose stuck in your mind. And also, I want to tell girls, especially girls. I have seen like 3 to 4 girls wherever I go. In the tech fields, there are less girls. That's why many companies are actually giving away the scholarships or the programs where they are hiring girls to maintain a ratio of boys and girls. Just think, there's so many, like so less, well, so many boys. So one thing I would suggest that marriage is a choice, and being independent is not. Being financially independent is a mandatory option. It is mandatory. You gotta have to do that. You have to be financially independent. Then you can go for anything. So you will find yourself like maybe busy, going insane, something like that. You're not being productive. So you gotta make a habit. If you look at the machine learning, what they are doing, this we are like training the machines. So you gotta train your mind with habits, like everyday habits, and you gotta have a discipline. Like when you are waking up, you just start brushing your teeth. You're not like thinking about it, just brushing, start brushing your teeth. So what you do, it is your habit. You're not thinking about it, you're just doing it. That's what you have to do with your career, with your coding, with your area of field of interest. So I hope that's beneficial advice for you. And also the last, try to be your own cheerleader. Don't expect from others, just be your cheerleader. Whenever you're low, just be your cheerleader. Look after yourself, take care of yourself, and you know that you will do great in your life. So I hope this session was very nice for you, and we are looking forward to arrange many more like subjects and core meetings. So I'm getting many feedbacks. Thank you guys. Uh, yeah, we are going to arrange hackathons, competitions, and also the workshops. Thank you, Adrish. Thank you. The exposure dear children has to offer. Yes, yes, Abhinish, I'll do it. And we will proceed to. Thank you, Abhinish. And we will also arrange something like we will focus only on one subject per workshop, and this was the overview. Just dig up some resources and try to build like mini projects like hello world. Okay, just do it and do everything a little bit. Don't overstep, just one step, baby steps, moment by moment. Let others go and submit. Let others do whatever they want. You just get a track of your like progress. That's it. And don't look at the LinkedIn. They're posting everything, their certificates, everything. That's not good. You just have to like what you have built with your learning. That's only matters. And last but not least, just your happiness matters. And you can be broke as insane and happy, and like you can be a frustrated soul and be very rich. That's the one option, and the other option is you can be broke and but happy. So the choice is yours. So there's also a third option, you can be happy and also rich. So rich is not the point, but you have to be financially stable. So after that you can go, just be happy, stay safe, and give a personal space and also the professional, and take baby steps and mini projects here. Right? Do every day like coding, competitive programming, and stay happy and be your own cheerleader. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone in the chat section. Hope to meet you soon in the DSC, and love you all. Bye.